Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and you're listening to my DevRel and Dev Advocacy podcast. And it's been a while since I've recorded an episode of this, but it's been a while. I've learned a lot of things, and I know a lot of people are trying to ask me sort of like, how do you break into DevRel and Dev Advocacy? Um, how do you build a good sort of portfolio for this kind of thing? How do you build a good reputation? Because that is part of being a DevRel. It's like building a reputation for yourself. Basically there are sort of two tracks in being a DevRel. Okay, well, there's like three tracks. Okay, so there's like sort of like the content track where you basically the idea is you're creating content to educate. Okay, so we actually will refer to this as the education path, and oftentimes the role will involve all three of these paths. So this is in the case where your focus is on educating people by writing blogs, by updating docs, by going out and doing webinars and workshops, but your focus is sort of education. Second track is community management, where basically the idea is that you're trying to get people sort of part of a community where they're excited to get to know each other, where they build sort of an attachment to the brand and the product because you're making friends, you're learning how to do things better. You're trying to generate a community around the thing. Okay, and again, the reason why community is useful because people once people are part of a community, they want to grow that community. I mean, it's people just want to feel connection. So your job is to help foster that connection, and that does involve you feeling that connection as well. Again, at the end of the day, being a DevRel and going through the motions without having sort of that attachment to wherever you are, it's going to make it really hard for you to be a good DevRel. You got to be excited about your product or your technology or whatnot. Okay, like I know working for the last 4 years at Dremio, I've been excited about the concept of Dremio, the potential of Dremio. What is Dremio? Like the potential of how the world can be different if Dremio got to the place it can get to. Okay. And that drives me to do all these tracks. And the third track is an individual contributor where basically, or an IC, and essentially that's just basically being um a recognizable figure, essentially being a tech influencer. Okay. And that's a mix of both. I mean, you don't become a tech influencer just because you post a lot. You got to be educating, you got to be fostering community. And from doing both of those things, you're going to build a reputation for yourself. You're going to build awareness of yourself to a point where basically um, you kind of enter this third track where you're kind of like a spokesperson. Okay, so it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different because you're not necessarily just purely educating. You are now sort of like it's you kind of hit this stride where basically um it's hard to explain. Well, you are now not just you are part of what is the pull. Okay. um you know People aren't going to an event just to learn about the thing, they're also excited that you're there, which is weird. That like I'm definitely someone who's like comfortable with sort of kind of some level of spotlight, but it's always still weird when people actually like come to necessarily like they're excited to see me in particular, um, versus just being excited to come to see the content of the event. But again, basically, if you're doing your job full throated, that's going to eventually happen because people are going to really want to learn more from you. People are going to want to associate with you because you're building community, you're being part of the community, and whatnot. So that's essentially what you got to think about the job. So at the end of the day, in DevRel, you're going to be representing some sort of tech company, okay, or some sort of technology. So in that case, you also need to understand the technology. So basically, okay, you want to go into DevRel. So now that I've kind of got into the weeds about the job itself, let me talk about how you would break into it. At the end of the day, you need to show that you can do all these things. Okay, and just being technically savvy, knowing how to write code or how to work with a particular technology isn't enough. Okay, because if you understand the technology, but you can't communicate how to educate about it in a coherent way, it's going to be really hard for you to be effective at this job. If you can't, you can be an introvert. Like I'm actually naturally an introvert. Okay, basically, if you ever see me at an event, you interact with me, I'm going to be very very social. but I'll certainly be looking for I'll constantly be looking for like a space alone when I can. I'm definitely, naturally an introvert. I've learned to be a extrovert as a professional necessity for lots of the different types of roles I've been in. So if you've watched the previous episode of this podcast, you know that I've been in a lot of roles where I've had to be sort of extroverted, whether it was politics or educating in finance or things like that. Okay, where I know how to interact, but it's not sort of like what I naturally seek. Um, so part of it is like, okay, hey, you may not necessarily be an extrovert, you may not necessarily be, you know, as social as that doesn't mean you can't learn. Okay. And a lot of that's just practice. Again, the more you do it, the better you get better. The more you talk to people, the better you get at talking to people, whether that's your favorite thing to do or not. Okay. And these are parts of the job. You're going to be going to events and talking to people. You are going to be educating and you need to interact with people, and be really open and warm about it. I mean, certain things, if you're just naturally sort of like a warm, fuzzy person, it's definitely going to help, okay? Because it is much easier to build that connection with whatever your content is, and whatever you're doing, if you are sort of like approachable, okay, in a sense like you, and that's again something that can be developed over time. I wasn't always as, I mean, I was always warm and fuzzy, but I wasn't as approachable as I am now, versus my sort of more introverted, awkward younger days. um but okay, so what would be first steps in sort of developing your resume? One thing, again, another part is writing. So you know a technology and like choose sort of like what kind of technology you're getting into. Like, are you talking about software development? Or are we talking about data engineering, whatnot? So if you're talking about like web development, probably choosing some sort of front end or back end framework as sort of your focus. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get a job teaching or being an advocate for that specific technology, but just choose something to kind of be sort of your focus. Ideally, it's something that's burgeoning, like it's like up and coming, but not like you know no one needs another set of like React docs in a sense. You can do that, but it'll again you'll make more of a splash choosing something that's sort of like not what everybody else is doing and becoming sort of like the influencer of that thing. Okay, because one, that thing may become big because of you. Um, Two, it'll help you develop that distinguishing brand and show that you can develop a distinguished brand, which is going to be helpful for you for applications. Um, and it'll give you some room to sort of learn. So basically, again, the if you've seen my previous videos, like there's sort of an approach that I take to creating content where I'll learn a thing, then I'll write a blog on the thing, then I'll do a video of the thing. I recommend doing that because that is going to help you build your repertoire of content. And that's going to be a big thing in your application because if you say, hey, I want to be a DevRel, but you can't show that you've created any kind of technical content educating people and that demonstrates either your ability to communicate or the evolution of your ability to communicate, because of course your first video isn't going to be as good as your 40th video. So don't worry about what the quality of that first video is another point. Like whatever your first blog is, whatever your first video is, it's not going to be as good as your 40th, which is not going to be as good as your 100th. But the more you do it, the more you reflect on what you've done after you've done it, and like think like, hey, what would I do differently the next time? What don't I like about what I did? You'll do it better in the next round, and you'll just keep improving. Okay, but if you wait till you get, if you're waiting till you get a job to become a blog writer and video maker, there no companies don't want to pay you to figure it out. Okay, they want you to kind of have some familiarity with this going into it. Like the idea is that they're hiring you to provide, to be their advocate, to be their champion, and you need to be ready to be that. Um, Two, when it comes to events, especially if you've had just gotten hired or you're looking to build up your reputation, it's much easier nowadays. Like doing now again, applying the talks, it does take a little while to build sort of like the reputation and repertoire to be consistently accepted to larger conferences. Um, Definitely, like for me, like the turning point was when I published my first book, which is not going to be a typical experience for many developer advocates and DevRel people. Some may write a book. Sometimes people get into DevRel dev advocacy because they wrote a book. I went the other way around. I wrote a book because I was in DevRel dev advocacy. But again, that's not necessarily, I would say, like representative of what your typical journey would be. But you still want to build that content and you still want to speak at events. Okay. And then the thing is that if you can't find events to talk at, you create your own events. So right now you can create a calendar on Luma for free. Okay. You can then schedule, you can, if you have worst comes to worst, you use like a Google Hangouts. You can generally run an event, invite people to a Google Hangout and talk and share your presentation and talk. And again, the first couple times you do it, it's not going to be great. But the more you do it, the more you get better at doing it. So again, the point is choose something you're interested in technologically and begin doing the job now for free. Okay. You may not work for that technology that you're interested in, um, but as you build your brand, you can then apply for DevRel Dev Advocacy position saying, hey, look, I've already kind of grown my following in this, tangentially in this space. So again, if you're talking about data engineering, talking about some sort of query engine, I mean, right now, low hanging fruit would be something like a data fusion. Um, if you're talking about like web development, talking about a lot of these like IDEs, these AI IDEs, and kind of helping people learn how to use them. Like the newest one is, I forget what I think it's called, Anti Gravity from Google. Taking a look at like what's kind of cool, what's kind of excited. You can read the news and be like, okay, hey, let me make a bunch of content around that new thing. Again, don't get too tied up on whether that new thing is going to be your thing forever. Think of it as this is going to be the place where I kind of make my mark and show that I have the ability to learn, communicate, as I like to say, to educate, entertain, and enlighten. Um, and then that becomes part of your application. You say, hey, look, here's my YouTube channel. Here is my Medium blog. Here are recordings from different events that I went to. So if you're organizing your own events, now you can actually say you organized events and you have recordings of those events and you point them to the best ones. But the idea is you got to start doing the job, okay? Because you may be someone who's like currently like a software developer or someone who's just sort of tech savvy, or you feel like this is, more you're on the other end where if you are already sort of good at making content and you want to get into DevRel, but where you lack is on the tech side, then again, more reason to get hands on with tech and create content around the tech to improve your tech skills. So when you do this pattern, you're going to be improving your tech skills and your content development skills. But the point is, like, don't wait to do it. Start creating content, start socializing, start going to events, and you will get better at it, and you will find that you will naturally kind of get a role. Okay, because again, it's definitely a role where there's certainly a shortage of people who can effectively sort of do all these things in a consistent way, and have the sort of the passion. And that's another thing. Like you got to find that passion. You got to find that excitement to like go write the next blog and do the next video and go speak at the next event. You got to find yourself. That's why you want to find a topic that you're excited about, that you want to educate about, that you want to win. And the same thing when you apply for a company. If you apply and get a job at a company that you're not that familiar with, you got to go find what it is that you love about whatever that company does. Okay, that's never been a challenge for me. Like at the end of the day, like you find the way to kind of see the potential, see and then fall in love with the product. Because again, you're out there to be a champion educator, a champion advocate, a champion. Okay, you're there to beat the drums and say, hey, this thing is going to make your life better, and you got to meet it, which means you got to sit there and like really kind of reflect on the thing that you're doing and really learn about it and learn how. And a lot of it's going to be for you identifying, hey, man, here are the places where this thing can improve, and relaying that to the product department, or saying, hey, there's some friction here or some stuff that's maybe not well documented, and creating content around that, or updating docs or whatnot, doing what you can to make it easier for people to see what you see. But you got to see it. You got to believe in it. And if you do that, it's a really rewarding career. It's really awesome to get to talk about something that excites you and you feel passionate about on a regular basis. And they get basically, yeah, you get paid to just basically scream at the top of your lungs about the things that excite you. But you got to find that. You can't just look at this as like, oh, this is a job. Okay. Okay. It's not like, hey, you got hired to do a thing and you just do a thing. You got to look at it as, hey, the job is to be passionate, to be a passionate communicator, a passionate champion, a passionate educator, and a passionate communicator around technology. And if you look at it that way, you're going to be really successful. You're going to go real far, and you're going to have a lot of fun. Okay. If you look at it that way, and if you look at the things that you have to do, and you look at them as things that you're excited about, the job is so much fun and so rewarding. Um, but if you hate to write and you hate to record videos and you hate talking to people, this is not the role for you. Um, again, I said I'm naturally an introvert. I don't hate talking to people. I just naturally don't. Um, but you know, you do the job, you naturally will. Okay, you get better at it, and on top of it, like if you do your job really well, creating really quality content, people will come talk to you, which really makes things a lot easier. Like I'll do things like one of the things I'm doing lately is I'm wearing this really large Apache iceberg chain. Okay, it's really sort of kind of obnoxious, but the thing is that wearing it, people will come to me and talk to me because they want to know what the story is. So there are strategies where if you're not naturally an extrovert and you don't feel comfortable necessarily approaching people to go talk to them, you can pull people in by piquing their curiosity in a way and finding ways to pique their curiosity. But yeah, okay. So I've kind of gone to a lot of different areas, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this. My name is Alex Merced. And yeah, you're listening to the DevRel and Dev Advocacy podcast. And we'll wrap this up. Again, you can always find all my links for social media over there at alexmerced.com. So head over to alexmerced.com. Also, of course, I'm a Dremio developer. Well, I'm actually the head of DevRel of Dremio nowadays. Um, and I highly encourage you to get hands-on with it. It's easier than ever. Head over to dremio.com/get started. Try out Dremio. If you work with data, you're going to love it. And have a great day and enjoy.